Today we're talking about the most powerful machine humanity has ever built, and the engine hiding inside it. SpaceX is flying a rocket taller than a skyscraper, designed to launch again and again, and it could change who gets to space and what it costs forever. How did one company go from nearly bankrupt to landing rockets on their tails, and then catching a falling booster out of the sky with two giant metal arms? By the end of this, you'll understand the engine, the rocket, and the wild strategy that got them there. This matters because the cost of reaching space decides what's even possible up there. Cheap access means more satellites, faster internet, more science, maybe one day cities on Mars. For 60 years, space was rare and astronomically expensive. That is the wall now cracking open. And whether or not you ever leave Earth, this already touches your phone, your maps, your weather, your internet, all of it riding on satellites overhead. The price to put those up is collapsing, and that ripples all the way down to you. It starts with one simple, radical idea: stop throwing rockets away. For decades, every rocket was used once and dropped into the ocean, like flying a brand new plane a single time and then scrapping it. SpaceX's first great trick was making the rocket come back. Their workhorse, the Falcon 9, launches its payload, then the bottom half, the booster, flips around, relights its engines, and lands upright on its legs on a pad or a ship at sea. The first time it worked, it looked like science fiction running backward. Picture a pencil balancing on your fingertip. Now drop it from the edge of space at the speed of sound and have it steer itself down to land gently on a target the size of a tennis court, in the dark, on a boat. That is what they made routine. Why does landing matter so much? Because the booster is the expensive part. Reuse it instead of dumping it in the sea, and the cost of a launch can drop enormously. It's the difference between a single-use ticket and one you can punch over and over. Reusability turned launch from a rare, gold-plated event into something closer to an airline schedule. SpaceX now flies and reflies the same boosters again and again, some of them many times over. That cadence is the real revolution, not one rocket, but rockets that keep coming back. But Falcon 9 has limits. Only the booster comes home. The top part is still mostly thrown away. It burns refined kerosene, which leaves sooty gunk that makes fast reuse harder. And it's about as big as that design can get. To go further, they needed something genuinely new. Enter the heart of the next leap, the Raptor engine. This is the part rocket engineers get genuinely emotional about. It burns methane instead of kerosene, and it uses a design so brutally difficult that, for half a century, nobody had managed to fly it at all. An engine's job is simple to say and savage to do: pump fuel and oxygen into a chamber, burn them, and throw the exhaust out the back hard enough to lift a skyscraper. The whole game is doing that efficiently, and surviving your own fire while you do it. To feed that fire, you need pumps, turbopumps, spinning insanely fast to force propellant into the chamber. And to spin those pumps, you burn a little propellant first in a smaller chamber called the preburner. How exactly you do that is what defines the whole engine. Older engines waste some propellant doing this, burning a bit just to run the pumps, then dumping it overboard half-used. Raptor uses a design called full-flow staged combustion, where nothing is thrown away. Every last drop of fuel and oxygen ends up in the main fire. It runs two preburners, one fuel-heavy, one oxygen-heavy, each driving its own pump, then routes everything into the main chamber. The payoff is more thrust, more efficiency, and cooler running pumps. It's widely considered the single hardest kind of rocket engine to build. Why so hard? Pushing hot, oxygen-rich gas through metal tends to make the metal itself catch fire. The exotic alloys and engineering needed to tame that quietly defeated rocket programs for 50 years. Raptor is one of the very first engines to fly it for real. Then there's the fuel itself, methane. Why methane and not kerosene or hydrogen? There are three big reasons, and they all point at the very same goal: flying again, flying fast, and flying far. First, methane burns clean. Kerosene leaves behind soot that gums up an engine. Methane barely does, so you can refly the engine sooner with far less work. Clean burn means fast reuse, and fast reuse, remember, is the entire point of all of this. Second, Methane is a sweet spot. It's more capable than the easy, simple fuels, yet far easier to store and handle than ultra-cold, finicky hydrogen. It's the practical pick for a rocket you want to fly like a workhorse truck, not baby like a fragile show car. Third, and this is the wild one, you can make methane on Mars. Combine the Martian air and buried ice with the right chemistry, and you can brew rocket fuel on another planet. Choose methane here on Earth, and you've quietly chosen the fuel for the ride home. All of it, the reuse, the Raptor, the methane, pours into one machine, Starship. It's a two-part rocket built to be fully and rapidly reusable. Not just the booster this time, everything comes back and flies again. That has genuinely never been done before. The bottom is a colossal booster bristling with around 33 Raptor engines firing together. The top is Starship itself. The part that carries the cargo or the crew reaches orbit and is meant to land and fly again, like a spaceplane crossed with a grain silo. And here's the detail people refuse to believe. It's built out of shiny stainless steel. Not exotic black carbon fiber, the same family of metal as a kitchen sink. It's cheap, it stays strong whether freezing cold or red hot, and you can weld it together out in a field. That one choice tells you everything about the philosophy. Most rockets are precious, handcrafted, gold-plated machines. Starship is built to be cranked out like an industrial product, rough, fast, and crucially cheap enough that you can actually afford to risk one. Which brings us to the strangest part of the whole story, how they build the thing. Traditional aerospace plans for years to make sure a rocket never, ever fails. SpaceX does almost the exact opposite. They build fast, fly early, and fully expect some of them to blow up. It's called a hardware-rich approach. Instead of perfecting everything on paper first, they build real prototypes, push them until they break, learn precisely why they broke, and fold that straight into the next one, which is already half-built and waiting in line. So the early Starships did dramatic things. One nailed a tricky mid-air flip but hit the ground too hard and burst into a fireball. So did the next few. Then one stuck the landing. To SpaceX, those explosions weren't failures. They were expensive, extremely loud data. This is why their bloopers feel so different from old space. A classic launch failure was a national tragedy. A SpaceX prototype exploding is more like a Tuesday, half the control room cheering because that cheap, fast prototype just taught them the one thing no simulation could. And the trade-off is real, worth saying out loud. It's loud, it rattles the neighbors, it scatters debris, and critics call it reckless. The counter-argument is raw speed, that iterating in the real world gets you to a working rocket years sooner. That debate is still very much alive. Then they pulled off something that looked flatly impossible. The booster, minutes after launching, came screaming back down to the very tower it lifted off from, and was caught in midair by two enormous metal arms, like a pair of chopsticks plucking it out of the sky. Why catch it instead of landing on legs? Because legs are heavy, and they're slow to reset between flights. Catch the booster with the tower, and you skip the legs entirely, and in theory you can refuel and refly from the very same spot, fast. Reuse taken to the extreme. Just sit with that for a second. A 20-story metal tube falling out of the sky, slowing itself with nothing but engine fire, and settling into a pair of waiting arms with the precision of threading a needle. The first time it worked, even the engineers looked stunned. So what does all of this actually buy us? If a giant rocket can fly, land, and fly again in days instead of years, the cost to reach orbit doesn't just dip, it can fall off a cliff. And cost is the wall that absolutely everything in space eventually slams into. Cheaper launch means more of everything. Bigger telescopes, global internet, science missions that were once unthinkable, and the raw muscle to send serious weight to the moon and Mars. Lower the toll on the bridge, and suddenly the whole world starts crossing it. It's also the backbone of the satellite internet already beaming down from low orbit, thousands of small satellites that need a cheap, high-volume ride upstairs. Reusable rockets are the only thing that makes launching that many even remotely possible. Now, the honest caveats, because this isn't a finished story. Starship is still being tested, still occasionally failing, and the fly every few days dream is not here yet. Bold timelines around this stuff have slipped badly before. A little healthy skepticism is exactly right. There are real worries too: debris and noise around the launch sites, the environmental cost of launching this often, and an awful lot of the future riding on a single company and a single personality. Cheering the engineering doesn't mean waving away the risks. But step back, and the direction is impossible to miss. In a single decade, landing a rocket went from impossible to a one-off stunt to routine to catching one out of the air with a tower. The line on that graph is bending hard, and it's bending fast. The core lesson under all the fire and steel is almost embarrassingly simple. Treat rockets less like rare treasures and more like reusable machines, and the entire economics of space flips upside down. That one mindset shift is what's quietly driving the whole revolution. And the engine is the quiet hero of it. Full-flow staged combustion, burning clean methane, built cheap enough to mass-produce and refly, Raptor is the piece that makes a fully reusable giant even thinkable. The rocket grabs the headlines, the engine does the real work. So what should you actually take from this? First, watch the cost per launch, not the explosions. The fireballs make the news, but the number that genuinely matters is how cheaply and how often they can fly. That is the real scoreboard here. Second, notice the method, because it is spreading well beyond rockets. Build fast, fail cheap, learn in the real world, iterate, repeat. That loop is reshaping cars, AI, and hardware everywhere. The rocket is simply where you can see it most spectacularly. Third, keep a clear head. This is genuinely thrilling and genuinely unproven at the very same time. You can be amazed that they caught a booster out of the sky and still ask hard questions about cost, safety, and who exactly controls the road to space. Because that's really what's being built here, not just a rocket, but a road. A cheaper, reusable path off this planet that, if it actually works, future decades will simply take for granted, the way we now take a flight across an entire ocean for granted. So here's the one thing to carry out of all this. The breakthrough isn't a bigger explosion, it's reuse. A rocket and an engine you can fly, land, and fly again is what quietly turns space from a rare stunt into ordinary infrastructure. Raptor's clean-burning, nothing-wasted fire, and Starship's cheap, catchable steel are two halves of the same bet. That the way to the stars gets paved not with perfection, but with machines you can actually afford to use again and again and again and again. If this finally made the rocket make sense, subscribe. There's a whole universe of this stuff we're going to unpack. Next time, the real economics of reusable rockets, who actually pays, who profits, and why this messy, competitive private space race might just be one of the best things happening for our future. See you there.